Good afternoon, everyone. I'm just going to give everyone a chance to join. So we're just going to wait about a minute and then we're going to kick things off. Thanks very much. Good afternoon. My name is Craig McCartney. I'm the Managing Director of CEO.digital, and it gives me great pleasure to welcome you all to Volume 5 of All Things AI, the Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. This series, we're going to be looking at retail and the impact of artificial intelligence within the retail industry. And this is also going to be presented to you by our two AI experts, David Skerrett and Paul Winsor. Before I get into the introductions, just a quick shout out to our sponsor, DataRobot. They've been working with us on this particular webinar, and Paul has joined us as their subject matter expert to present hopefully some really interesting and great ideas around retail and AI. So on that note, a quick introduction. So David has been leading this webinar series with myself as the sort of main webinar chair and host. David is an AI enthusiast. He's a digital transformation expert with many awards to his name, I'd say 140 and counting. He's been named as a Drum Digerati twice in the last 4 years, a Beamer Hot 100 thought leader, and also placed 17 in the Drum Mobile Top Influencers. Then also joining us today is Paul Winsor. He's the Retail AI General Manager for DataRobot. He comes with a wealth of experience, over 30 years in the retail industry, a majority of that time spent at Sainsbury's in senior roles with a focus on data-driven strategic objectives. And Paul has also led the retail business practice for database and analytics-related software leading technologies before moving into the AI sector. So welcome to you both. I'll be handing over shortly to kickstart the presentations, but I just wanted to give you a quick heads up on one of the recurring elements of this webinar where we vote on the good, the bad, and the ugly. And David's going to touch on this later, but I just wanted to give you a quick example of what that could look like. So, you know, when you're thinking about AI in our workplace and in our lives, you know, if it's good, then, you know, it should exist. It's useful and it's interesting. If it's bad, well, it should definitely not exist. It serves no purpose. It's harmful, and we should probably be very worried. Then the bad category, you know, it's not going to win a beauty contest. We have to question why it exists and if it can be improved. So that's the sort of general feel for the good, the bad, and the ugly. Paul and David will present 6 use cases towards the end of the webinar where you as the audience and the listeners will get to vote in on that, and then I will display the results. So it should be good. I know that David and Paul have got a couple of interesting use cases to present. So to kick things off, as an example, I wanted to just show you the first good, bad, and ugly vote that we're going to be doing. It's looking at how AI is helping Walgreens with flu prediction. So they basically gather loads of data using all the prescriptions that are sold across all the Walgreens stores, and then also looking at the different weather patterns, which helps them to decide on where the flu is going to hit next. They do have quite a big flu problem at the moment in the States, so this is one way is they're looking to make sure that they've got enough coverage with medicine in those target areas. And what makes this relevant is obviously there's the coronavirus at the moment, and while health authorities battle that, you know, it's quite interesting to note that there's an AI algorithm called Blue Dot, which already actually identified this outbreak well before the World Health Organization. So I'm going to just pull up the poll quickly to show you how it all works. And if you could just choose to vote on it, good, bad, or ugly, my hunch is that it's going to be in the good section. So yeah, have a vote. That's it. I think most of you are voting now. So just a couple more seconds, and then we're going to kick things off with David. So I'm going to close this poll. Thanks, everyone. Good to see that that one is definitely 100%. So here's the agenda. David, I'm going to hand over to you, and yeah, enjoy.
Thanks, everyone. So yeah, great to be back again, and great to be able to take you through the overview of today's 1-hour webinar. So essentially what we're going to do is, my role is to start to set the scene, I suppose, in terms of both AI terminology and some of the initial states of play within retail, and then I will hand over to Paul, who, as Craig mentioned, is today's expert, and really looking forward to hearing his presentation when we delve into retail and AI. And then, yes, we're looking forward to sharing 6 examples and getting some audience participation a little bit later in the session with some interesting AI examples in the world within retail. So yeah, exciting. So let's do this. Okay, so my first topic really is to frame, I guess, the terminology, so we're all confident and literate in it, I suppose. And so we've got what we call this sort of Scotch egg of AI here on the left. And what you'll see, the largest circle is, of course, AI, which is actually a constellation of technologies, all the way from machine learning through to natural language processing. And essentially, AI is the incorporation of human intelligence into machines. It's actually classified into 2 fields, what's called narrow AI and then general strong AI. And then what you have is you have machine learning, which is the next layer down, which is a subset of AI. And that is classed as empowering computer systems to learn through data to make predictions. Machine learning is the study of algorithms that improves through experience and is the driving force behind many of recent breakthroughs. And then deep learning there actually requires high-end machines, a large amount of data to train and deliver results. And it's actually inspired by the way human brains work in terms of both direction and comparison. And then in the broader sense, we have NLP, natural language processing, which is the final one for me to define on this slide, which is where it's focused on the interactions between computers and human language in both spoken and written form, in particular through processing, analysis, and comprehension. So as well as setting the scene on AI, I thought it'd be good to set the scene on retail. So retail is no stranger to evolution and revolution. From all the way back to the small local corner store, perhaps a century ago, where actually you would walk in and you would have a personalized experience, they would know your name, there would be much less stock, but they could recommend quite easily, through to things like malls, the mass adoption of cars, of course, the upscaling of large department stores. We've gone from a media landscape, of course, with just 2 TV stations in the UK, to millions of on-demand media touchpoints, and so much choice now by the likes of YouTube and things. It's a very fragmented media landscape we're operating in. And then more recently, we've obviously had things like the mobile revolution, which is essentially, you know, it's a smartphone in your pocket that was as powerful as what put man first on the moon. And that has led to things like expectation inflation. So we used to order something online, let's say it's sort of Amazon or a John Lewis, and we used to be okay with sort of maybe 3 to 4 days delivery, depending on the price. These days, 24-hour delivery is actually starting to feel a little bit slow, and maybe it's just about the new norm until something comes along. E-commerce is much more trusted now, and I guess you could say, depending on who you're shopping with, is nearly friction-free. But today, the big evolution is absolutely in this world of big data and AI. And the reason it's causing such a stir is it's powering things like the personalized customer experience online that we used to get in the local store, ironically. It's powering things like voice-powered commerce, of course, with the tech giants, which I'll talk about in a moment. It enables things like social commerce, and it actually does a lot below the, I guess if you use the iceberg metaphor, it does a lot below the water or the ocean as well. So things like logistics, making sure things are in the right places, people are in the right places, that the back office data logistics are on point, and things like fraud is mitigated. So it's a fascinating world. So we're looking forward to delving into it today. So the next thing I want to do is, I guess, tee up some what I think are quite seismic statistics and interesting stories from those, and that we can infer as trends. So I think the first one is absolutely the state of play within AI right now. So in 2018, Capgemini have the stat of 28% of retailers deploying AI in 2018. But I think there's a really good bit of perspective there. If we look back just 2 short years, 4% of retailers. So that's a really big jump. That's basically just about 25% of retailers. And I would argue that now we're in 2020, that stat even of 28% is on the low side. And I'd imagine it should be at least a half, if not more. Now, 41% of those top 100 retailers with 10 billion revenue are actually already working with AI now. Which is encouraging. So you can see that the masses, the small businesses who don't necessarily need it, and it's not their bag, shall we say, are bringing that number down. But basically, the use cases are very, very powerful, and we'll get into this in more detail. But you have things like e-commerce personalization and data analytics, automation, increased sales, fraud detection, improved customer experience, automated, I guess, seamless workflows, and things like predictive analytics. But one of the key use cases we're going to talk about today is incremental sales. So what do these smarter predictions and handling of vast amounts of data and efficiencies actually give us? And what does that infer and mean for us as most companies essentially work in this Amazon world of, I guess, the sort of elephant in the room? So I'm going to talk a bit about Amazon now. I am a big fan of Amazon, generally speaking. And I don't think a retail presentation is complete without at least touching on the Amazonian elephant in the room. So Amazon, of course, used to be the world's biggest bookstore. Now they are the everything store and a lot more, if you look at the hosting and infrastructure and cloud infrastructure they have there. But basically what they're doing is they are one of the most advanced in terms of making decisions powered by data. So they're the masters of multivariate testing. And so what that does is they create, I think, a solid shopping experience, but I think this little case study here is perhaps less so. So let's take the shopping experience for me when I was looking at some Nike trainers recently. So you can see in the middle, you have a price range because I haven't told them the size of the shoe yet. Although I'll be honest, they should know the size of my shoe because it's not my first rodeo when it comes to buying these Nike trainers. I have quite a few of them. So the price starts at 75 and goes all the way up to 164, which is a really big range. Now, AI could make this experience 10 times better. Like I say, they know what size shoe I am. They know my purchase history. They have the sales data. They know that actually a lot of people buy black trainers. That's on trend in the winter, which is when we are now. So there's a lot of topics they have there. Yet every time I change either the size or the color, I get such a massive amount of price increase and decrease and out of stock. And you get that thing where you get referred to third parties and caveats and delivery times change. It is essentially a digital whack-a-mole. And this is from arguably the most data-centric and tech-literate company in the world. So that's kind of interesting. Now let's have a look at the 5 pillars of what makes a successful retailer today. So how au fait are they with the competition? What's their location? How good are they at delivering unique value? What does their tech stack look like today and tomorrow? Have they placed the right bets? Are they able to deliver the right experiences with the right back-end structure? And can they make predictive and quicker decisions? How is their experience looking? Can they surprise and delight you if it's in store? How does it make you feel whether it's in store or online? What are their promises? What are their returns policies? How are they with inventory and logistics? And what are they like with data? Are they able to predict, for example, new fashion trends? Are they able to look at real-time customer data and start to order an additional stock in readiness? Are they able to do smart things around maybe segmentation, personalization? These are the key building blocks. And so I want you to keep those in mind as we talk about some of their potential use cases for retail. So across the value chain, you can have things like immersive shopping experiences. You can look at it from a procurement point of view and look at it for logistics, including auto restocking, supply chain, stock replenishment. You can look at AI for things like upsell and cross-sell. You could even look at it for things like less food waste and therefore lower carbon footprint. You can have an improved experience 24/7, 366, given it's 2020, by things like Macy's On-Call app. You can have personalization, including recommendations like you see with eBay and Amazon. You can get great product recommendations that also tackle fake reviews. You can improve store layouts via AI. As mentioned, you could detect fraud, deliver quicker, make returns easier. You can even now have things like voice interaction via things like ASOS Enki. The world may soon see much more drone delivery by things like Amazon Prime Air. Let's remember drones run on AI. You could then have things like AI-based smart mirrors in store to differentiate, which is used by the likes of Burberry, and then even have things like cashierless stores via Amazon Go, analytics, and then queue reduction via the likes of Starbucks, of course, with their great app, and brands such as Zara are getting into this space. So there's lots of use cases, and that is why retail AI is actually the hottest category. So if you can see the very dark blue for 2018 and for 2019, this is the heat map based on acquisitions of businesses. And the hottest category right now is retail. So it's very pertinent we're talking about it today. And second only to cybersecurity, which comes a close second. So really interesting to look at the kind of acquisition and M&A landscape of the last year quickly. So the first thing there was McDonald's. Of course, you know, fast food, very physically orientated, but are getting more into delivery. They made a $300 million acquisition of an AI personalization platform called Dynamic Yield. Ultra Beauty have acquired a virtual makeover startup called Glam ST and a customer engagement software company called QM Scientific. And even Nike have got in on the act, acquiring a company called Select and Vertex. So it seems like it's a really hot space, which always makes me think. And so I got to thinking, and I thought of the FANG stocks, which are very popular, but also it's been updated to be FAAMG, Facebook, Amazon, Apple, Microsoft, and Google. And they are massively into acquisition and the race for AI. They have a vested interest in success. So it got me thinking, as I said, so Facebook, they acquired a company called Face.com, facial recognition AI software, which enables personalized retail experiences. And in their case, joined up experiences, and it can even train AI. And you can just imagine how many pictures of faces Facebook must have by now. Then you have the Oculus, which allows for retail to be more immersive. Amazon, of course, the Everything Store, they've got into the physical space via things like Whole Foods. They've also got into the community space via IMDb and Twitch. Google, of course, the front door to most websites now. They're obviously into things like via YouTube, a very successful acquisition for community and content. But it also got me thinking about Waze, which is a fascinating business which powers some of the sat navs now, and it gives you real-time traffic alerts, and it's a community platform. But it could be very interesting actually for logistics of the future and future mobility and driverless cars actually moving product around in the retail sphere. Then you have Microsoft, who are much more in the kind of connected comms world. But last and definitely not least, Apple. So their Beats acquisition was definitely a little bit about hardware, but it was also about software, and they're competing with Spotify. And then they also acquired Shazam, which is their play into discovery, and of course Siri for AI. So super fascinating landscape. Then I thought interesting to have a little look at their revenue. So this is, you know, let's be honest, this is 5 of the biggest businesses in the world right now. So how are they in the retail space? They're acquiring all the hottest startups in AI, and they actually have a vested interest, because as you can see here, if you could look at the combined revenue on the far right of the bar chart, you can see that online retail is just under a quarter of their revenue. Advertising is just under a quarter of their revenue, which obviously has retail as a massive customer. And finally, hardware, which ultimately is retail and is sold, is 36%. So, you know, you can look there and you could see, oh, wow, that's kind of, you know, that's over 3/4 of the 5 biggest companies in the world are essentially in the retail space. So they're both friend and enemy, what I like to call frenemy. So now the next slide is called AI in retail, and it's to go into more detail around some trends we're seeing with AI. So you see the first one there is actually AI in e-commerce. It's really booming. So it's expected to reach $36 billion worldwide in just 5 years. Global annual spending is estimated to reach just over 7 billion in 2 years. And that's partly thanks to significant improvements in the customer experience and some operational optimization and inventory efficiency. The next area there is personalization. So as I've been mentioning, this is a really powerful area for AI in retail. So you can see that we've got from Forbes, 40% report customer personalization efforts having a direct impact on maximizing sales, basket size, and profits, such as via e-commerce. A further 37% point to an increased lifetime value through things like product or content recommendations. But yet 46% of executives are not where they want to be yet. And that is because, as we all know, sometimes things in life are not as easy as we want them to be. The last area is efficiencies. So you can see with Capgemini there, they're putting AI to use. They have 270 billion in cost saving thanks to that. And then the final one is that it's really important to look across the value chain, not to just obsess over the shiny front end customer experience, and think more broadly across the entire value chain. So this example's kind of cool and interesting from Wipro. So I've borrowed it. It's actually a real case study for those that are into that kind of thing. So it actually starts with Meghan Markle, who is wearing the goat dress, and digital media reports it. Tweets and Facebook posts start pouring in. Now, in a future world, not the world of today, retailers preempt the demand using machine learning algorithm, which takes into effect and input all the social media and all the analysts and the sentiment and the mentions and all that, the other good stuff, and the velocity, as it's known, in which things spread in terms of virality. And then it looks at demand and it starts to queue up things. It has a single version of truth. The consumer goods companies are actually seeing the signals and are able to start manufacture, potentially even via things like 3D printing, that's actually in warehouses close to the retailer, therefore to reduce things like carbon footprint, time, and efficiency on logistics, not waiting for it to ship from China for 6 weeks or something. Customer demand is then satisfied in the retail store, and process of collaboration continues with demand there for this trendy product. And that's a really interesting example that takes us from the beginning, which is demand sensing, these magical moments that seem to happen in culture, that you have the trickle down effect, you have machine learning and algorithms being smart enough to detect things, through to some efficiency, some carbon efficiency there, and even through to happy customers and ultimately happy retailers that preserve the profit margin. So that's super interesting. But my final example before I hand over to Paul is from eBay. So nice quote from Tom Pinkney here, who's the VP of Applied Research, and he says, AI and machine learning are driving incremental sales that wouldn't otherwise have happened. I think what's super interesting for eBay as a business is they've been able to use AI to provide structure in essentially a non-structured data world for them. They have millions of buyers and sellers across 190 markets who are interacting with 1.2 billion listings on a given day. They now have 2 decades of that data. And what's interesting is, whilst they don't hold inventory, they're in the business of helping both buyer and seller connect. It's a platform where they take a commission. So they've done 2 really cool things with AI I wanted to point a spotlight to just now. In 2018, they brought something into their homepage called Interests, which is the ability for customers to instantly personalize their shopping experience based on things like passions and hobbies and styles. So you like running, you like barbecues, you like gaming, and you like a certain brand, let's say. And then those interests are used via a combination of machine learning and human curation to make shopping more inspiring. And they saw that 2.6 million users onboarded across the first 5 countries, and shoppers really loved it. They got great feedback. Power users actually gave eBay 18 of their top interests, which is super interesting. Now, shopping is obviously a visual experience. So then comes one of their other innovations just the year before. So in 2017, eBay launched image search, which actually allows buyers to use images as a search query, as we often can do in Google now. So whether it's a picture or a photo of them or a screen grab or whatever it might be, image search makes it super easy to find exactly what they're looking for. And all these improvements use AI to power a sharper experience and a smarter experience for buyers that give them essentially an unfair advantage. And therefore eBay benefit because they now have a much better understanding of their shoppers, what they look like and how they want to shop. So super interesting for me, but I think it's good to call out that they don't hold any stock. So it's a slightly different model, but I think it is fascinating when you have 1.2 billion listings a day and you have 20 years of data and you bring AI to that sort of melting pot. I guess the advantage for both business and consumer that can be generated. So I hope that was enjoyable. I'm now going to hand over to the lovely Paul, who's going to go into more detail regarding retail and AI.
Great, thank you, David. Can I just check that everyone can hear me?
Yep, loud and clear.
Yes, wonderfully, thanks.
Just gonna share my screen. Okay. So welcome to everybody on the webinar. Thank you for joining, and thank you, David, for setting the scene so well. My name's Paul Winsor, as Craig introduced at the start. So I'm the Retail AI General Manager for DataRobot. DataRobot is a leading AI enterprise platform working with a number of retailers today to solve business problems that AI is enabling them to do. So what I wanted to do is I kind of wanted to simplify this in terms of the experience that we're seeing around the retailers that we're working with today. And when I look at the retailers that are deploying AI today, and in particular machine learning, to solve some of the challenges within the retail space, you can pretty much group them all into these three challenges. So the first challenge is we all know ourselves that we're very empowered today as consumers. We have the ability to shop anywhere at any time and search and decide on what we want to buy and how we want to buy it. And retailers today are looking at understanding that consumer behavior to anticipate when their customers are evolving their shopping habits and their needs. We all know today that we are changing the way that we're thinking and feeling and types of products we want to buy, and we're looking to change our lifestyles. And retailers today are looking at the signals within the data of their customers to understand when consumers are starting to change that relationship with them. And so if you can do that and you can start to predict when those changes in relationships are going to happen, then you've got a better chance to start to be proactive about doing something about that. So instead of it just happening and realizing it's already been done, it's whether or not you can use the signals to predict this is something that's going to change in the future. So that's one area where we're seeing retailers address some of those challenges using AI. Now moving on to the second challenge, I'm very much still thinking about the customer. Everything that we seem to be working on with our customers today are very customer centric. So when retailers are looking to innovate and bring new products to the market, how do you make sure that you successfully bring those products to the market based on the optimal price and also the right amount of quantity based on the demand that the product is going to have? So if you're launching a whole new category or a new product and you're going to put some marketing behind that to invest, to advertise for that product, but it's not a product that you've sold before, how do you predict what the quantity is going to be needed to hit that market successfully so you don't disappoint customers and you make sure you have the right amount of quantity for the demand? And so retailers today are using AI to make sure that they bring new products to market successfully. Now, I would say, staying in the second challenge here, that the biggest use case the DataRobot are seeing today in the whole AI space is demand forecasting. So we're seeing a number of retailers moving away from very traditional methods of forecasting to be actually AI machine learning driven. So actually getting down to the point where you're forecasting the quantity that you're going to need based on building machine learning models, right down to the SKU, right down to the day, and right down to the store if you're a physical retailer, right down to that level of granularity. And that's the scale that we're now seeing retailers actually adopting AI inside their organization. I'm going to talk about some of the successes of that in a second. And then the third challenge is all about operational efficiencies. As Craig said at the start, I've been in and working around retail for the last 30 years and working for fast-moving retail organizations. We know that retailers are under immense pressure from hyper competition, and that's impacting operating margins today. So anything that you can do to relieve that operational pressure by introducing AI to predict better outcomes, this is what we're seeing retailers use AI for today. And they're all centered, as you see by my boldness here, of focusing around better experience for the customer, serving the customer better, and doing it operationally as efficient as possible. So let's bring it down a little bit further. So these are typical, very common use cases that we see today that retailers are using AI and machine learning for. So on the left-hand side, I'm not going to go through all of them today, but predicting the next customer state does really mean when is a customer going to move into a different state of a relationship with you, and what kind of tactics and how proactive can you be about engaging with them in terms of that. Also thinking about things like digital marketing attribution. You know, where should we put our marketing investments to make sure that we're always very much aligned with the customers and where they're shopping today. You can see in the product and supply very much focused around price and forecasting. So making sure that the product's always there when the customer is ready and is expected to buy it. And then the operational efficiencies, a couple to point out here. Predicting where to locate a new store when you're thinking about opening a new site to attract more customers to come and shop with you, and also how do you staff those operations as well. So let's dive into that a little bit further for a few minutes. So the empowered consumer. I really like this article and report that came out at the end of last year by Retail Week and Valitor. I've been spending quite a few years talking about how do retailers understand the different shopping behaviours of each type of generational shopping. But as we know now, I think we've moved away from the age brackets, and we're welcoming the ageless consumer of the future. If you have a quick scan of some of these types of shopping behaviours, you probably find yourself either being one or two or have been one of these people in the past and moved into a different types of shopping behaviour. But the fact is, we're looking at AI, trying to get as much insight into our customers today so that we can react and respond to what their needs and wants are. And as you can see, just simply by these 4 different examples, very, very different behaviours. You know, ethical values, shopping is a necessity, insist on being well informed before making purchases, and thrives on discovery. You know, very 4 distinct types of shoppers. And I think you'll find that whenever we're considering to buy something, we can be, you know, many of these when we're thinking about that. But the point is, can we actually get to the point where we understand our customers very well so that we can respond and engage with them effectively? And this is what one of DataRobot's customers today is doing with their customers. So Kroger is I think they're the 6th largest retailer in the world. They're trading out of the US. I think they've got about 2,700 stores. And as the data points suggest, they're serving 60 million households within those 2,700 stores. And they're analysing the shopping behaviour of the customers that shop with them. One really interesting data point, which isn't on this slide, it's worth really calling out. As the 6th largest retailer in the world, 96% of all of their transactions that are transacted by their customers, 96% of that is paid for with Kroger's loyalty card, which would suggest they've got very loyal customers. Now, why have they? Well, through DataRobot and AI, Kroger are producing over 1 billion personalized offers to those 60 million households, with the likelihood, predicting the likelihood of, if I send this customer a coupon, now what would be the likelihood of them redeeming it? And of course, what they're looking at is based on their shopping behavior, their profile, their personality, their interests. If I send them this coupon, is it a coupon that really relates to them in order for them to feel delighted by receiving it and then, of course, redeeming it? So significant hyper personalization, of being able to do that at scale using machine learning to predict the probability of customers that would redeem those personalized offers. I also like the fact that they produce every 4 weeks something called My Mag, which obviously stands for My Magazine. And every 4 weeks, they send these personalized magazines out to 60 million households. Now, that could either be in paper form or it can be digitally. Now, obviously, with GDPR, every customer is signed up to these programs and happy for them to be communicated to. But it's a fantastic example of how you can really get very personalized to make sure that you're engaging with your customers effectively. And today they've got over 200 people inside their organizations building these models based off the DataRobot machine learning platform. Now, let's give you a quick example of the kind of assortment and supply sort of challenge that retailers are solving as well. You know, shocking numbers, just really put up as a headline here. You know, we're still seeing too many out of stocks in the retail industry, too much lost revenue from those out of stocks, and it's something that retailers have tried to be grappling with for a number of years. What retailers are doing today is moving away from very traditional methods of forecasting, just basically looking back at sales and stock and injecting their forecasts with machine learning capability. So on the left-hand side, taking your historical data of what you've sold and the situation of the products at that level and any historical data that you have, also overlaying as much external factors as you know about your business. So you understand the calendar holidays and the impact that's going to have on your business. You can make sure that you provide all of the insights of the promotional calendar of when you're going to actually run promotions, local sporting events that's going to impact your business, anything that's dramatically changing with the economy. As we know, there's so many things that are impacting the retail industry, and we're seeing that now with the coronavirus having an impact as well. So taking all those external factors, that internal historical data, and then being able to train and score machine learning models to actually find the right quantity for each item that you're going to need to have the right amount quantity for the expected demand from customers. And as I say, retailers today are taking this all the way down to the lowest granular level. That's basically being able to build a model for every single SKU across every single store and every single trading day. And of course, you can then inject those quantity demand forecasts into your supply chain processes and feed that in so that you've got more accurate forecasts, which hopefully leads to reducing the lost sales and also satisfying the customers that they've got the product when they need it. Which is one example I have here. I can't say who the retailer is, but it's a large global apparel and fashion retailer that with 4 people building the projects around the machine learning models in less than 5 months were able to increase the accuracy of their forecast by 9%. That means that every time an item is forecasted right down to the store, for each item, it was developed using machine learning capability, and the retailer indicated that the total annual savings were about $300 million because, of course, the product was there when the customer wanted it in the right size, style, and color and fit, and also they weren't having problems of markdown as so significantly because they increased their accuracy by 9%. So moving away from traditional methods of forecasting to be AI powered, it's really having these kind of impact around ROI. And then finally, operational efficiencies. I'm going to give you 2 examples here. I touched on them earlier, but it's a really good point to just sort of raise them. So we all know that employee wages is the second highest cost in a retail business. And when you've got volatile periods within a calendar year, such as Black Friday in the golden quarter, where the volatility of that demand is going to change so dramatically because you're putting a lot of revenue and sales through a very, very short concentrated amount of time. How do you predict the demand you're going to need in order to staff your business properly and effectively? Now, here's an example of one of the retailers that was looking at this from a distribution center perspective. So all of the stock is coming into the distribution center to be sent out to the stores and also to people's homes. How do you make sure you've got a right amount of staff to pick that stock and get it out using the deadlines that come with this in terms of the efficiencies? Now, before using AI and machine learning, this retailer was getting about 67% accuracy of being able to judge how much staff they need, about 67%, about two-thirds. Since deploying AI and machine learning with DataRobot. In 2018, that increased to 92%, and then they reran that model in 2019 over the same Black Friday period, and it increased to 95%. Now, what does that mean? That's a saving of not having to find short-term contract hires to deal with those demand spikes, not having staff standing around not being productive, but actually having the right amount of staff in the right time. We also have seen this working very, very effectively for retail stores as well. And my final example is Carrefour. Carrefour trading in a global hypermarket retailer trading in over 30 countries. Have seen the fact that consumers now are just time poor. They haven't got time to spend half a day shopping in large hypermarkets anymore. We are all time poor and we're looking for convenience. So Carrefour are now moving their strategy to opening Carrefour Express stores, and they're looking to find the right location to put those stores based on data points such as population of people in a certain area, the average income, whether there's any competitors in that space, the amount of footfall, the traffic, and building that into the model to predict if I opened a new convenience store in this location, what would be the predicted revenue I would get from this. And Carrefour have gone on to be a testimonial of how they're building those models to hypothesize on where they should put new stores. And they're opening new convenience stores in France and Italy and Belgium and Brazil right now. And they're using machine learning for the first time to understand where to open those new stores. So I've given you about 4 examples, but being the organization that we are, working with our customers in the AI and machine learning space, we kind of get all of the real value, high impact use cases that there are in retail. These are just another example of more. There should be self-explanatory that we're working on with our customers today. And it gives you an idea of how you can move your business to be much more AI driven, to get more accurate, to satisfy those customers. So I think I'm stopping sharing now, I think, and we're going to move on to the voting. I don't know if that's back to you, Craig, or David.
Yeah, on to David now. Thanks very much, Paul.
Brilliant job. Thank you, Paul. Super fascinating. So yes, we're on to the interactive portion of today. So looking forward to getting some audience participation. Craig very articulately has already taken you through the good, the bad, and the ugly. So just as a recap, good should exist, bad shouldn't exist, ugly isn't going to win a beauty contest. So this is mine. So excuse me, Uniqlo is a reasonably famous global clothing retailer, and they've been pioneering the use of science and AI to create a unique in-store experience that's differentiated for them. Select stores have something called an AI-powered U-Mood kiosk that shows customers a variety of products and measures their reaction to the color and style through neurotransmitters. So based on each person's unique reactions, the kiosk recommends products. Customers don't even have to push a button. Their brain signals are enough to know how they feel about each item. So I think this is potentially good, in my humble opinion, because for Uniqlo, it does create this differentiated, unique first-to-market experience, which therefore might get them some PR and talkability and some additional footfall and therefore potentially sales. To react is obviously very human, so it'll be fascinating to see this in the wild. And it's a nice, interesting use case for AI. It's kind of cool. Bad, I don't know, like maybe I'm a bit old school here, but I quite like human interaction and human recommendations based on the old ways. And perhaps some of these recommendations might be quite random and maybe not as personal or as effective as you think they might be. And then ugly is that, this could create quite a kind of sterile retail environment in the future, devoid of people, when traditionally shopping has been a more of a social experience. So will we be comfortable being served by booths and robots and things like that, and mind reading? I don't know. It all sounds a little bit Minority Report, but we live in interesting times. But I'd love to get your view.
There we go. If we could all vote. Thanks very much. If you think it's good, bad, or ugly. I think the word Yubu could have been a better name for it, though, David.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks very much, everyone. I'm going to take that one down.
Amazing, thank you. So that's the first one done. So we'll get those results later. It's Craig mentioned. So over to Paul.
Yeah, and I've already sort of touched on this, David. I'm trying to find it hard to think why this would be bad or ugly if done right. You know, with the amount of noise and information that we're consuming on a daily basis, you know, being able to receive something that's totally kind of connected to your, you know, your personality and your behavior and your likes, and you know, in this context around food, you know, things that you want to try as recipes, new products that you might want to try that's got an affinity to products that you've bought in the past. Being able to receive a magazine that basically kind of feels like it's made for you. I think this is, you know, a great example of, you know, what we're seeing in the top, I think it's the top 3 trends of this year is personalization. And I think AI is the first technology that's going to allow retailers to get very personalized with their consumers. So yeah, away you go and judge this one.
Yeah, very interesting. I think anytime a brand can help save a consumer either time or money, it's off to a winner. And in this case, it actually does both. So that's a nice opportunity.
Yeah, and you'll be pleased to know that is looking incredibly positive. So thanks everyone for voting. We'll go to the next one.
Yeah, fantastic. Right. So how do you follow that one with something slightly crazy? Would be my honest answer. So there is an optics researcher called Janelle Shane in the US who's developed an interesting AI solution to a problem I'm not sure the world had, but that's fine, via an algorithm that picks the most novel and unique Halloween costumes. So believe it or not, there are over 7,000 Halloween costumes in the world, and they used a machine learning algorithm called TextGenera NNN. And that algorithm studied the examples and learned how to spell and combine all the words effectively to then create and design its own outfits. And so there's some really crazy ones that have come out, and it's quite interesting to me that a lot of them are sort of like a word smoothie of let's get some things and combine them. So the examples are ballerina Trump, sexy Minecraft person, but my personal favorites are the strawberry clown on the right, and I hope you don't all think he's ugly, but perhaps he's a teeny bit. And then of course the very cute vampire chick shark, which I definitely wouldn't want to be seen at my door on a trick or treat opportunity, but that's fine. But if you're interested, do check out the New York Times website. So I think this is good because it's using machine learning and data to interpret. It's bad because I don't think it's solving much of a key problem, but that's fine. And it's ugly because all the examples are mashups, like I said, smoothies and cocktails. But I hope you're not offended by the strawberry clown.
It could be good to reduce the time spent thinking about what to dress up as on Halloween, but then you're going to spend the rest of the time making the strangest costume you've ever seen.
Yeah, it's certainly be unique.
I'd be up for one of those.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks everyone. Just a few more seconds. Oh, this one is splitting the room. Okay, we've gone.
Good.
Okay, good.
I like to split the room. That's fine. Amazing. Okay, brilliant. Well, we're on to our 4th one already. So now back to you, Paul.
Yeah, so let's head back to, you know, some big challenges here for retailers over the last number of years. You know, we always absolutely critical for a retailer to make sure that they've got staff serving customers when they need service, and also not just front end in stores, but as I talked about earlier, but you know, a whole agile supply chain and making sure that stock that arrives in the distribution center gets picked efficiently and effectively to make sure it's sent out at the time that customers are expecting those products. And so using AI to predict the actual demand of staff that you're going to need based on the historical situations and sales within inside your business, to build a model that can predict that accuracy. You know, this is a huge cost to any retailer, huge leakage when it comes to impacting operating profits and margins. So for me, I'm struggling to find why this would be bad or ugly. And I'm giving you another example in my world, which is, you know, based on being able to show this sort of use case that I just talked about, it sounds like a pretty good idea.
Thanks, Paul. Yeah, I mean, it is very good. That is one of the benefits of AI. There's a lot of good that comes out of it, so I think it's a strong example. Okay, just a few more seconds there, and then we'll get to the next one. Thanks everyone for voting. Again, this one is very good, obviously. So we'll get to the next one, David.
Amazing, yes. So I'm probably going to split the room again, but I don't mind. So this is a really interesting activation from HBO. So I'm moving outside of retail for a moment here. And essentially it creates a overly personalized experience, what might be called creepy, to showcase like privacy and data concerns. And it was just done in January in Vegas at the CES show. And it was kind of their spiritual sequel to an activation they had last year at South by Southwest. So the TV show Westworld shows this sort of dystopian future where we kind of have this artificial world with lots of robots and things. And basically the VP there, Stephen Cardwell, said they wanted to create a first-hand experience of the promise and perils of a data-driven future. So they created a pop-up restaurant. And what it did is all the waiters were actually actors, and it was at the Nomad Las Vegas Hotel. And they addressed the diners by name, that they actually had already done research on everyone who was coming to dinner. So they'd gone on to all their social media, and they'd seen like their children's names, where they like to go and travel, what kind of food they take photos of, how they take their coffee, their nicknames, that kind of stuff. And then when they went to serve them, that they benefited from a personalized menu that was tuned to their needs and wants using an AI algorithm, which is super interesting. But also they kind of creep them out by sort of referring to things that there's no way a waiter should have access to information regarding. So it was just an interesting experiential pop-up marketing stunt, which I think is a super interesting way of asking a question around, when you pay for personalization, you maybe pay with your data, and if it's too personal, it becomes creepy. So yeah, I wanted to share it with you, and if you're interested, the new TV show starts in March. I think it'll be quite good, and there's a little microsite if you want to dig into the tech a bit more. So there's a bit of good and a bit of bad, but quite a lot of ugly in there. So I'd love to hear what you think.
Yeah, it's like taking the Paul's example of the hyper-personalization targeting and sort of flipping it around and making, obviously, invasion of privacy and making it very, just a bit weird, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a bit weird. It's talkability, isn't it? It's a stunt at the end of the day. So they're trying to say something, and it's kind of interesting. Made my eyebrows go a little bit. So I thought let's share it with the group and see what everyone thinks.
Cool, thank you.
Great.
No worries, right. Great stuff.
So David, whilst you've been sharing some very innovative ways of how AI can change the way that decisions are made, I'm going to stick with my last one, which is very much practical. So the first example was, can we identify the right coupon and magazine to somebody that's has a probability of wanting to take advantage of that? The second one was, can we use AI machine learning to make sure that we are staffing up to the level that customers are going to need in order to be served? And this last example is, as I talked about earlier, is moving away from very traditional approaches of how retailers forecast. And I'm surprised today that there are still a number of retailers out there that are using quite archaic traditional methods to do that, when as consumers ourselves, all we want to do when we've made that decision that we want to purchase something is to actually have it and get it as quickly as possible. So using machine learning capability to be able to build models at scale, right down to every single item that you would see in this aisle on this image, on every single store, on every given day, how many quantities of each item do I need to satisfy the expected demand that's coming through this week? Very valuable. And the other point I want to make, there's a lot of text on this slide, is also because we know as consumers we have such a great service these days from retailers, where we can order things from retailers and keep them for a while before perhaps deciding to return them. Again, predicting how much of the stock that you've sold is going to come back into your supply chain, so that you're not filling your warehouses, that you're not ordering more or manufacturing more, but using predictive capabilities, using machine learning to address how much of the stock that I sold do I anticipate was going to come back into my supply chain. Again, fantastic way of really taking and transforming the way that forecasting has been done for a number of years.
Great, so last one, and while you vote, we do have a few minutes available, so just cast your votes on that last one, and then I'll display the results. Nearly all of you have voted there. Thank you. Okay, again, this one, as you can expect, was going to be pretty good, wasn't it? So thanks very much, Paul. I do have all the results, and I'm just going to quickly update them. I do have a question while I do that, though. So I've got a question in the chat window, and this looks like it's for Paul. It says, you mentioned only 1% of models are monitored once in production. How can you do that?
Yeah, so so a lot of models that actually in the past that have got through into production, so they're operationalized and they're actually operating to a fashion where, for example, it's repeating a demand order based on those machine learning models. In the past, we've seen companies not actually monitor those models. And we know in the retail industry that so many things change the circumstances of how a retail business operates. We've only got to look out of the window and realize how much weather changes the way that consumers shop. We've had 2 storms in 2 weekends here in the UK, and it's prevented people from going outside and shopping. We've got, the concerns coming through around the coronavirus. These things are having an impact on the way that consumers shop. If you're not monitoring the models that you put into production, then the impact could be that they will start to drift away from what they were set out to do. So you have to monitor the models that you put into production and spot to see if things are drifting away from its real purpose. And in DataRobot today, we have customers that are using DataRobot to spot those drifts, very quickly reacting to them and having a competing model ready to upload and bring the current model down. Really important. It's a really important aspect of putting this into production.
Thanks, Paul. And then I do have one other one. We still have a couple of minutes, and I can display the results straight after this. It says, what kind of change management processes do you need in place to move your decision making to be AI driven from traditional methods?
Well, I think today's proved that, when you talk about AI, it's a multitude of systems that, ordinarily would normally, have a human involved, but now we're looking at AI to combine that as making those decisions. It's a transformational technology. Now, I've worked around data warehousing, business intelligence in the last number of years. This is a transformational technology. And so from a change management perspective, first and foremost, your organization that you work in needs to understand the impact that this is having on your business. I've heard a quote that basically from Elon Musk that from Tesla that says that if your competitor is building AI and you're not, then in the next 2 to 3 years, the impact of that is they could crush you. Whatever competitive edge you've had in the past, if your competitor is driving personalizations of coupons based on machine learning models, that's going to give you a better prediction of arriving with the right coupon. If retailers are using AI to open up new stores in locations and you're not, it's going to give them a better advantage of having the store in the right place. And if your customer is using AI to make sure the quantities of forecast are right, then those customers are going to be happy they're getting the products and they're always satisfied when they're shopping with them. So this needs a real understanding inside an organization. I think retailers need to make sure that their executives are fully on board. It's something that they're building into their strategy. It's an awareness and DataRobot have spent the last couple of years working with a number of our customers to get that knowledge embedded into organizations.
Thanks, Paul. I hope I haven't cut you off. I just wanted to quickly display the results before webinar kicks us out. So you can see there were some interesting ones. So thanks for providing those. We'll email this all around to everyone, plus any of the slides if people wish. But yeah, I just want to say thank you to our wonderful speakers. Thank you for that. That was really insightful. I always learn a thing or two on these, so very beneficial. And then this is the curated series. We're going to be looking at a couple more themes over the coming months, so please do come back for more, and we will keep you updated with invitations. So I just want to say thank you for joining us. If you'd like an introduction to DataRobot, please can you speak to myself or Carlin, who's going to message you with the details of the slides, etc. And David, thank you again. Paul, thank you for joining us.
Pleasure. Thank you.